Hi there, students of 4B. This is Mrs. Friedberg, and I'd like to read you a story called Captain Smudge, written by Stephen Cosgrove and illustrated by Robin James. On a beat up, battered boat in a very small port on a very small island in a very, very small sea stood the dirtiest sea captain in the world. He had gum wrappers stuck in his hair, coal dust on his nose, a filthy smile on his face, and instead of a parrot on his shoulder, he had a muddy, mucky mudlark. He was so dirty and despicable that he didn't even have a real wooden leg, but instead used an old mop handle with the mop still hooked on the end. None of the other sailors or fishermen who lived in the port knew his name, but they all called him Captain Smudge. Now, Smudge hadn't always been like this. In fact, he once was a normal, healthy person like you or me. But one day, while rowing far out into the bay where his father had told him never to go, his boat was capsized by a large and fairly ferocious sea monster who, unfortunately and quite accidentally, bit off his leg. Even then, things would have been all right, for a friendly carpenter in town carved him a wooden leg, and that was just as good as the old one. But the other fishermen who lived in the town made fun of him. They teased and teased, calling him peg leg and old wooden toes, and one day they even set fire to his artificial leg. Fortunately, he was able to put the fire out by dousing it in the rain barrel, but alas, the wooden leg was damaged beyond repair. Being the poor fisherman that he was, he couldn't afford to buy another wooden leg, so he fashioned one out of an old mop handle, thinking that it would just have to do. Well, this did nothing to help the situation, and the other fishermen just kept teasing and teasing until Smudge vowed revenge. Smudge thought and thought of ways to get even with all the people that had laughed at him, and he was thinking he accidentally dropped a candy wrapper in the water. He watched as it floated gently out to sea, and there it got caught in the net of one of the fishermen. Well, everyone knows that you can't catch fish with paper stuck in your net, so the fisherman pulled his net out of the water and removed the candy wrapper. Aha, said Smudge with a sly smile. I know what I'll do to get even. I'll throw garbage and junk into the sea, and then we'll see who laughs last. Smudge set about diligently picking up the garbage all over the town and stuffing it in an old dirty bag. He picked up tin cans, old pans, garbage cans, and anything that looked like junk. Then he dragged it down to the bay and threw it and all into the sea. That'll teach you to laugh at me, he shouted, and with that he went to find some more. And so it went on for years and years, Smudge steaming by in his beat up old boat, throwing garbage and junk merrily over the side, and the fishermen constantly cleaning their nets. Finally, out of frustration, all the fishermen decided to hold a mass meeting to find a solution to their problem. They all agreed. They all gathered on the port side of the dock in the bay, where Robert McJames, the tuna fisherman, Large Marge, Sarge of the barge, who was always fishing for crab, and all the rest of the fishermen who worked on the sea. What are we going to do? They cried. Smudge has thrown so much garbage in the water that the fish won't even swim near our nets. Old Marge cleared her throat, which was something like a foghorn, and said, If I remember right, there is a creature that sails the seas who helps folks like you and me, and her name is Serendipity. Surely if we can find her, we can solve the problem of what to do about Grundy old Smudge. With no other choices before them, they set out to find Serendipity. Suddenly off the starboard appeared the biggest, pinkest sea serpent you've ever seen. Marge shouted, Are you Serendipity? Serendipity smiled a very shy smile and nodded her head. Well, said Marge, we've really got a problem, and with that she told Serendipity all about Captain Smudge and his evil, smelly ways. And when Marge was through telling the tale, Serendipity thought for just a moment and then quickly set off in search of Smudge to talk to him about the problem. She had been looking for a long time when suddenly she saw a large black oily cloud moving towards her at a very fast rate. Ah, she thought, this must be Smudge now. When he gets here, I'll talk to him about the problem and show him the error of his ways. She cleared her throat and said, Mr. Smudge, I'd like to talk to you for just a minute if I could. But old Smudge didn't even slow his boat down one little bit and just steamed on by. And if that wasn't enough, he threw a whole can full of garbage right on Serendipity's head. Now, Serendipity was mad. All she wanted to do was discuss the problem, but instead, Smudge had thrown garbage on her. Using all the speed she could muster, Serendipity chased after the dirty old boat. It took a bit of doing, but she finally caught him by running his boat up onto the beach. Okay, Captain Smudge, she said. Now what's with all the garbage you're throwing in the water? Smudge sadly told her the whole story, and when he had finished, there was a large tear in Serendipity's eye. And with a lump on her throat, she swam quickly back to port. Serendipity called all the fishermen together and told them what had happened, and when she had finished, all the fishermen hugged their heads in shame. But what can we do? They asked Serendipity. Serendipity thought for a moment and then came up with a marvelous plan. Quickly she told the fishermen, and they all agreed, and then hurried off to set the plan in action, while Serendipity set off to pull Captain Smudge and his boat off the beach. By securing a heavy rope around her neck, she was able to pull Smudge and his boat safely back to the harbor, where all the fishermen were waiting with smiles from ear to ear. Smudge, said Large Marge when he safely was standing on the dock. Serendipity has told us that the only reason you're so mean and spiteful is because we don't love you and made fun of your wooden leg. So we all got together and made you a brand new one. And with that, she presented Captain Smudge with the most beautiful carved wooden leg you'd ever seen. With large muddy tears in his eyes, Smudge gratefully accepted the gift and hugged each of his new friends, promising never again to throw garbage into the water again. So if you ever see someone different than you or me, just remember Captain Smudge and this tale of serendipity. Excellent. I hope you enjoyed this story. It's one of my favorites. And go ahead and take the AR quiz, and I'll be checking in to make sure we're being successful in our quiz taking. Have a good afternoon.